Look, I'm so excited about this. If you've had barbecue beef ribs, you know. If you haven't, let me tell you, this is the most luscious barbecue you've ever had. Better than brisket, better than pork ribs, better than pulled pork. This is amazing. And I got my hands on this Wagyu plate rib. This is a chuck plate rib from Meat and Bone. That is a Wagyu BMS 7 or better. This looks to be like a 9 or more. Amazingly beautiful piece of meat. And we're gonna cook it on the Kamado Joe today. Now looking at it, you can see I've already trimmed it and it looks a little different, so you know I started this yesterday. So let's go back to yesterday and I'll show you how I got this prepped for today. Hey, welcome to yesterday. So this is roughly a 6-pound Wagyu beef rib. It's the whole plate rib from Meat and Bone. This is gorgeous. Now you see up here, there's all this silver skin. You're gonna get this on every beef rib that you buy. And so that's the first thing we're gonna do is remove this silver skin. So I'm gonna start by just pulling off some of this fat so I can expose the silver skin. I don't wanna take any meat. It's not gonna hurt anything if I take meat, but boy, this meat is so good, I don't wanna waste any of it. So I'm just pulling off the fat that's on top of silver skin. This fat over here that's not on silver skin, that's fine. I'm gonna leave that alone because that's gonna render and become flavor. Now, for those of you who are sitting there screaming about trimming fat because fat is taste, you see this silver skin under here? That's a membrane, and none of this fat would render into the meat through the membrane. So we gotta take it off, but it's not scrap. We're just putting it on the side here where we can use it for sausage or for making tallow. This is still a valuable part of the beef. All right, now that I've got the silver skin exposed, I can start to pull this stuff off. Pulling silver skin is an easy but tedious process. So all I'm gonna do is get underneath the silver skin here on one end, and then I'm gonna pull back up, and I'm gonna run my knife right underneath it. The membrane is nice and strong, so I want just silver skin, as little meat as possible. Look at the crazy marbling of this meat under here. Meat and Bone says this is BMS 7 or higher. This looks like 9 or 10, maybe even more. This is a domestic piece of beef raised here in the United States. But boy, it looks an awful lot like Japanese A5. All right, so let's take a look at what we've got. We've got incredibly marbled meat here on the plate rib. We've got some fat that's gonna render down into flavor along here. We've got some of the scrap. Look how it's melting just in my hand. This is Wagyu fat. This is the difference between Wagyu fat and just regular beef fat. This stuff is actually healthy, high in oleic acid. It's really good stuff. That's gonna make some great tallow or addition to a sausage. But this plate rib is ready. Now, by the way, we call this a dinosaur rib. You're gonna see why in the end, but there's only 3 ribs and they run this full length here. These are giant ribs. And so we don't pull any of the fat or the membrane off the back because they'll fall apart. This thing is gonna be so incredibly tender. We need that to hold it together. So that'll come apart when we're finally done. Now, just like any other piece of beef, gotta get some salt on it. So this process is called a dry brine. It's a fancy word that just means we're gonna get salt all over this beef, and then we're gonna let it sit in the refrigerator overnight for 24 hours. So our rule of thumb here when I'm using Morton's kosher salt, nothing fancy here, is about 1 teaspoon per pound. This is about a 5.5 plate, so I'm just using a couple of tablespoons. It looks like a lot of salt. Trust me, this dinosaur is a beast. It can take it. This is going in the fridge, and I will see you tomorrow. All right, so welcome back to today. So as you can see, that salt has been pulled all the way in. Look how the fat is popping. Look how amazing this looks. This is gonna render so good. So with all this intramuscular fat, this is gonna be so luscious that we can actually throw some real flavor at it. So we're gonna make an espresso rub today that's really gonna enhance and cut through that fat and make this a great experience. So let's throw that together real quick. So I'm gonna make enough rub to make a couple of these ribs, so you can cut this recipe down if you want, but I've got about 3 tablespoons of freshly ground espresso, about a teaspoon of cinnamon, about 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. Now I use monk fruit sweetener in mine because I'm keto, but you can Use real sugar if you want. About a tablespoon of granulated garlic, about a teaspoon of ancho chili pepper, a little teaspoon of celery seeds can bring out some of the umami, and a teaspoon of ancho chili powder. All right, and then we're gonna get about 3 tablespoons of fresh cracked pepper. I'm using the pepper cannon, which allows me to make it as coarse or as fine as I want and grinds at about 10 times the velocity of a regular pepper grinder. Love this thing. Look at that, already about 3 tablespoons. All right, that's gonna make a good rub. So because we dry brined the beef here, it's nice and dry on the surface, so we're gonna use a binder. My favorite binder for beef is, of course, Wagyu tallow. You can make your own if you do enough Wagyu briskets. I am out of my own, so I'm using this can, which works just fine. You can get this on Amazon. And all I'm doing is covering the surface here so that the rub will stick. So because of all of the fat, we can be as liberal as we want with this rub. We're gonna get a good coating on here. We still wanna be able to see meat, but don't worry, with all this beef and all this fat, it can take it. I'm gonna give these flavors a little bit of time to develop, a little bit of time to absorb into the meat while we get the grill lit. So let's head over to Kamado Corner. I'll meet you at the grill. So I'm gonna put a lot of charcoal in here today for a couple of reasons. First of all, this is gonna be a little bit of a long cook. This is gonna take probably 7 hours, give or take. But also, we're gonna be using a technique that was invented by my friend James from Smokin' Dad BBQ, called double indirect cooking, which is gonna allow us to maintain a hotter, cleaner fire, which is gonna, of course, consume more charcoal. So I'm just gonna bury a couple of splits of cherry wood in here so that they don't light right away, but as the charcoal burns down, they light and get consumed. All right, looks good, let's get it lit. Wilma! Okay, so with the top and bottom vents all the way open, we're gonna let this come up to temperature until the dome gets heat soaked. So we're gonna watch this, and when it's ready, we're gonna set up for that double indirect. Be right back. All right, we got good heat soak here, so let's get set up. So the first step in this double indirect setup is putting our heat deflectors in here and just resting them right on top of the charcoal basket. If the Kamado Joe you have doesn't have the charcoal basket, I strongly recommend you get it. Not only so you can do this double indirect setup like this, but also it works really well with the divide and conquer. All right, now let's get the rest of the slow roller together on here. So I'm gonna start with the slow roller base and the rack, and then the heat deflector that's part of the slow roller. So this is why we got double indirect. We've got the heat deflectors down below, and we've got this as well. And then we can put our grates on. We're gonna close down the bottom vent to about 1 finger, and then we're gonna watch as the temperature stabilizes here. And then as it comes up to temperature, when we get up to about 200, I'm gonna close down here to the second notch. When we get up to about 250, I'm gonna close down to the first notch, and then I'm gonna fine tune until we get to about 275, which is where we wanna cook. So we've got clean smoke. The dome temp is reading 250 degrees. I've actually got the Quad X Pro over here that has a probe on the grate, and a grate temp is 285. Somewhere right in between there is where we're cooking, and I'm happy with those temperatures. So with this double indirect setup, we can cook nice and hot because we're gonna keep running clean smoke. So I'm gonna put this temperature probe right into the beef rib here so I can keep track with the Quad X Pro of the temperature. And then I'm gonna position this with the thickest part of the rib towards the back because Kamado Joes run hotter on the back. I'm gonna plug this temperature probe into port number 1 just so I can keep track of temperature. Temperature doesn't matter as much as tenderness, but this is gonna be a long cook and we can watch how it develops. So I'm not gonna be back for a couple of hours when it's time to spritz. At least it'll be a couple hours for me. For you, it'll be like that. So we're about 3 hours in now. Oh, that's looking good. So the temperature from the temperature probe is actually reading over 190 degrees, which I would not expect this quickly. That could be because of the fat content of this piece of Wagyu beef. Now it's still got some more to go because it's gonna pull back here. My bark isn't completely set. Let's just see so we got an idea of what we're working with here. Let me just try the X10. All right, we're at 180, so I must have that temperature probe closer to a bone. We're just gonna keep cooking, but based on where this is, I think there's a chance this might be done in maybe 5 hours because I'm cooking hot with this double indirect, so maybe that'll work. I'll be back and check it in about an hour. Okay, this is starting to look like a beef rib. Oh boy. Can you guys smell this? All right, let's see. All right, we're probing tender here. I still got a little bit of tough over here. See, we're down at 188 over here. We're up here where it's super tender. We're up over 190, up over 200 here. So I think there's probably more fat up here than back here. We got a little ways to go. I think next time that'll be it. There we go. There we go. It's like going into a jar of Jiffy peanut butter. All right, let me pull this off, let it rest. I'm gonna give it a couple of hours and then come back and show you how it tastes. I can't believe I waited this long, but I'm lucky because my daughter came home. Everybody, if you're new, this is Leah. Leah is a food critic, taste tester extraordinaire, and likes a lot of what I cook, although she recently threw me under the bus and said, James from Smoking Dad Barbecue is a better cook than me. What up, yo? So, dinosaur ribs. You've had them, you love them, but these are Wagyu from Meat and Bone. You've had the ones, the G1 ones from Meat and Bone, and you said they were really good. Are you ready? Ready to see this?
I don't know.
You don't know if you're ready? I don't know if you're ready either, because look at that. Look. Do you guys see this? I think we should take a thumbnail picture. Can we take a thumbnail picture? All right, here we go. All right, Lee, I'm gonna pull this off the bone so we can, yeah, like I needed the knife for that. I'm gonna cut it up into pieces. You think that piece is juicy enough for you? I'm so excited about this. Here, cheers. Leah, moist. Yeah, do you wanna wipe your chin? Tender?
Yeah.
All right, how'd I do on yummy? All right.
Pretty good.
These are the shizzle, by the way. So the beef ribs recipe, anywhere you can get plate ribs, do it, that recipe works. Get the Meat and Bone ones. These Wagyu ones are sick. I'm gonna put a discount link down in the description. I'll put it on screen now. Definitely get them. And then watch this video next. I think you're really gonna like it. And I'll see you next time on Eat More Vegans.